The success of Destroy All Monsters called for another sequel to be quickly put in the works, as was the case with many of these titles. A lack of budget meant that the creative team had many hurdles to jump through in order to bring the film to life in the short time frame. Director Honda returned once more to helm the ship, this time with the most restrictions he had yet faced, and the result is an oft-maligned but intimate outlier in the Godzilla franchise in 1969's All Monsters Attack.
Let them fight.
You're a wizard, Harry.
You're gonna need a bigger boat. I'll be back.
Death has come to your little township.
Hey everyone, welcome to Chills and Thrills. I am Connor Dunham, and I'm back here with my co-host Chris. Today we're going to be doing 1969's All Monsters Attack, or in the American title, Godzilla's Revenge. And as we stated in our last episode, we couldn't wait to watch this. And how was your viewing of this one this go around, Chris?
It lasted 69 minutes, which is as long as the movie is. That's about all I could say of it. It's not a smooth 69 minutes.
No, I tried explaining to my lady when I watched this one that she asked which one I was watching. I told her, and she's like, "Isn't that like your least favorite one?" And then she asked me why, and I was just like, it's 69 minutes, but it feels like it's 169 minutes. It's a slow drag.
It's 69 hours.
Yeah, I won't rip on Godzilla films too often, but I'll marathon the franchise, or like I told you in a previous episode, that on Sundays I'll... come football season, I'll watch a Godzilla movie waiting for the NFL to start at noon. And this is one that I never choose to watch. I always go with something different. And I only watch this one when I have to, such as like we had to for this podcast. So I decided to watch it.
It very much gets the sort of participation trophy, existence within the franchise. It's the personification of the meme of like, you're on this council, but we don't grant you the rank of master. Like, you are a Godzilla movie, but oh boy, you're barely a Godzilla movie.
Yeah, granted, in this, the fight scenes are fun, but this. Coming from Ichiro Honda, this is the only film of his that I've seen that I'm disappointed in him.
Yeah, and look, as we get deeper into the weeds on the conversation, there's positive things to say. There's redeeming qualities. There are things that some people like about this movie that I'll try to bring up. They're not necessarily things that I love, but I'll try to, we'll try to give it its fair shake, but, it's hard to pretend to totally love a movie or totally like a movie when it's gotta be one of my least favorite, if not my least favorite of the series.
Yeah, and you see this one a lot of the time towards the bottom of tier rankings or just lists in general. If they go, from 1 to 36 or 36 to 1, or however you're ranking the Godzilla films, this one usually falls, I would say, in that bottom like 5 to 8 movies for people.
Yeah, exactly. People might, I'd say even the people who defend the movie pretty strongly, I can't imagine they rank it fairly high. It's got to be near the bottom realm. Do we want to do summary and then go into sort of general thoughts before breaking into the different categories?
Yep, we can do that. I'll get right into a little bit of the film. I'll pop the trailer in here, do a plot synopsis, and we can go right for it. All Monsters Attack is a 1969 Japanese kaiju film directed by Ishiro Honda, written by Shinichi Sekizawa, and produced by Tomoyuki Tanaka. The film, which was produced and distributed by Toho, is the 10th film in the Godzilla franchise and features the fictional monster characters Godzilla, Manila, and Gabra, to name a few. The film stars Tomonori Yazaki, Kenji Sahara, and Hideo Yamamoto, with special effects by Honda and Terayushi Nakono, and features Hiro Nakajima as Godzilla, Marcin the Dwarf as Manila, and Yasuhiko Kakayuki as Gabra. All Monsters Attack was released theatrically in Japan on December 20th, 1969. It received a theatrical release in the United States in 1971 by Moran Films under the title Godzilla's Revenge on a double bill with the 1967 film Night of the Big Heat. This film is often retrospectively considered one of the worst Godzilla films, although Honda had come to consider it as one of his favorites in the series.
Alrighty. Yeah. And what I think that Ishiro Honda tended to like about the movie is, from what I understand, these directors were on very similar sort of company contracts as the writers with as the actors with these studios, where you sort of did your assignment. You were sort of assigned projects to direct or act in, and you performed those duties because you were on contract with the studio. So from what I understand, Ishiro Honda's natural inclination might not have been to have made as many giant monster movies as he made. I think he had interests in more dramatic things. So I believe the reason that he likes this one is because for him it was likely a very different one that is much more of a straightforward drama about something that I understand that a lot of kids in Japan at that time were dealing with, which was the latchkey kid, where mom and dad both worked. So the child got out of school, went home, locked the door, and was just home alone until one of the parents, came home from work, or they had an older relative or neighbor that was sort of like babysitting them or watching over them. But it was a very, very much like kids not having a lot of parents in the household. And so I can understand why he probably liked doing a movie about some of those issues. But, that's, for me, it's a Godzilla movie. It's not a Japanese drama movie. It's in the Godzilla franchise. So, he's totally fair and entitled to like the movie for the reasons he likes it for. But I'm not the biggest fan of it.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. I had never heard the term like latchkey kid explained like that. I knew what it was, but like you said, both the parents working, kids home alone all the time or at a babysitter's. And then another thing that they say is it's like a bully representation movie, or I don't know if that was Japan, but I know in America they said it was like a standing up to your bully kind of film, kids being bullied film when they brought it over here.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's got elements of that too, and that's a positive thing for kids. Like, I'm not saying, if you show this movie to a little one, they'll probably, they probably have a better time with it than an adult would. Like, I'm not saying there's no market, there's no audience, or that it wasn't going for a certain, direction, but just in terms of, it's certainly a black sheep amongst the franchise. I think when we watched Sea Monster, I kind of said that it felt a little bit like off-brand Godzilla. You didn't have Ifukube, you didn't have Honda, you didn't have City Destruction, you didn't have the right fairies for Mothra. It felt like it was like Godzilla, but like an alternate version of Godzilla, like an off-brand. And this feels like that even more because there's no actual monsters in the movie. It's all depictions of Ichiro's imagination. And for me personally, as a moviegoer, like growing up, I always hated any of the It Was All a Dream movies or any of the It Was All a Dream episodes of television shows I watched. I always hated the feeling that you were watching something that didn't count, that didn't really happen, that didn't matter. So this being a Godzilla movie where all of it's sort of in the kid's head, it's like, yeah, that's a fun kid's story, but it makes it feel like it doesn't count. Like, without being not a Godzilla movie, it feels like this movie is as close as you can be to not being a Godzilla movie while still being a Godzilla movie.
Yeah, it made me think of. I used to be a big nerd fan of The Walking Dead when that first came out, first couple seasons. And you used to hear or I used to hear the little myth or the opinion that, in the end, Rick wakes up in the hospital and everything that happened was a dream. And I'm like, well, I hope not, because that's going to absolutely suck. That it's like a scapegoat almost. It seems cheap.
Yeah, I was a big fan of The Walking Dead for the first couple of seasons as well. I remember hearing that theory and just saying, like, well, that is the dumbest theory ever. Another one was I watched Game of Thrones when it aired, and it was like there's a character that gets put into a coma near the beginning of the series, and everyone's like, oh, the end of the series is going to show that everything that happened after he got put into a coma was all a dream, and he's just going to wake up from the coma at the end of the series. I'm like, why would you want that? Why would anyone want all of it to be not real, or a fantasy, I'm like, I don't understand that line of thinking.
Yeah, you just invested. I mean, Game of Thrones, their episodes are what? They probably average like 45 minutes or so, just like The Walking Dead.
Yeah,
So
maybe closer to an hour, yeah.
you've invested 16 episodes times 12 seasons. You've invested hundreds of hours or whatever it is to come to the end and oh, it was all a dream. Like, no, that's absolutely the exact opposite of how I want my show or a movie to end.
Precisely.
Well, how about I'll get into the trailer here, give a plot synopsis, and then we'll come back. I'll give you some numbers. We'll talk about the film some more and continue on with our tier rankings and everything else.
Sounds good.
Ichiro Miki is a highly imaginative but lonely latchkey kid growing up in an urban and polluted Kawasaki. Every day he comes home to his family's empty apartment. His only friends are a toy maker named Shinpei Inami and a young girl named Sachiko. Every day after school, Ichiro is tormented by a gang of bullies led by a child named Sanko Gabara. To escape his loneliness, Ichiro sleeps and dreams about visiting Monster Island. During his visit, he witnesses Godzilla battle 3 Kamacuras, brutally outpowering the 3. Ichiro is then chased by a rogue Kamacuras and falls into a deep cave, but luckily avoids being caught by Kamacuras. Shortly afterwards, Ichiro is rescued from the cave by Manila. Coincidentally, Ichiro quickly learns that Manila has bully problems too, as it is bullied by an abusive monster known as Gabara. Ichiro is then awoken by Shinpei, who informs him that his mother must work late again. Ichiro goes out to play, but is then frightened by the bullies and finds and explores an abandoned factory. After finding some souvenirs, some tubes, a headset, and a wallet with someone's license, Ichiro leaves the factory after hearing some sirens close by. After Ichiro leaves, two bank robbers who are hiding out in the factory learn that Ichiro has found one of the driver's licenses and follow him in order to kidnap him. Later, after his sukiyaki dinner with Shinpei, Ichiro dreams again and reunites with Manila. Together they both watch as Godzilla fights Ebirah, Kumonga, a giant condor, and some invading jets. Then, in the middle of Godzilla's fight, Gabara appears and Manila is forced to battle it. And after a short and one-sided battle, Manila runs away in fear. Godzilla returns to train Manila how to fight and use its own atomic breath. However, Ichiro is woken up this time by the bank robbers and is taken hostage as a means of protection from the authorities. Out of fear, and being watched by the thieves, Ichiro calls for Manila's help and falls asleep again, where he witnesses Manila being beaten up by Gabara again. Finally, Ichiro helps Manila fight back at Gabara, and eventually Manila wins, catapulting the bully through the air by a seesaw-like log. Godzilla, who was in the area watching, comes to congratulate Manila for its victory, but is ambushed by a vengeful Gabara. Godzilla easily beats down Gabara and sends the bully into retreat, never to bother Manila again. Now, from his experiences in his dreams, Ichiro learns how to face his fears and fight back, gaining the courage to outwit the thieves just in time for the police, called by Shinpei, to arrive and arrest them. The next day, Ichiro stands up to Sanko and his gang and wins, regaining his pride and confidence in the process. He also gains their friendship when he plays a prank on a billboard painter. The film All Monsters Attack is commonly regarded by critics and fans as being one of the worst Godzilla films, with many criticizing the film's tone, characters, and overwhelming use of stock footage. On Rotten Tomatoes, the film has an approval rating of 25%. It has a rating of 2.1 out of 5 on Letterboxd, 3.9 out of 10 on IMDb. This was the one that surprised me. 67% of Google users that voted liked this film. That seems a little high for me, considering our last one, Destroy All Monsters, was up at 92%. That's a little closer than I would like it.
Yeah, I mean, maybe Google's just a little just generous. I mean, I don't know if that might just be like there's a lot of normies that travel to Google, so maybe they're just like, "Oh, Godzilla movie. Oh, I like it," I don't know.
Yeah, gave it the thumbs up and went on their way.
Exactly.
This film made 260 million yen at the box office. Its initial attendance was 1.48 million. Godzilla's on screen for 8 minutes and 19 seconds, or 12% of the film, and his first appearance is at 13 minutes and 13 seconds, or 19% into the film's runtime. And those are my numbers that I have for you.
Nice. Yeah, I will say that, it at least has a redeeming quality of being the shortest Godzilla movie ever made. So, it at least, you can argue that it doesn't overstay its welcome, that it's made for youngsters with a shorter attention span. It has a lot of stock footage monster battles from both Sea Monster and Son of Godzilla, which, in this little trilogy of Monster Island movies, I would say those two are better than this one. But it has a decent amount of new monster footage where the mileage varies. Minya's like talking and changing height and things like that. So I mean, it's certainly a children's movie, and that's all I can say about that.
Something I noticed this go around. This was actually the first time that I have watched the Japanese version of this film. I've always watched the English dub, and I noticed in this version that Minya's voice, it's almost like a little girl, and in the American version, he's almost like a Barney, like the
Yeah.
goofy.
Yeah, the American one has kind of I think some people compare it to like what is it Don Knotts or something like that. I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't know my references, but yeah, it's got like a Barney goofy weird voice, and I think it is a woman. I think I did hear a read that it is a female doing the voice in the Japanese version. Uh, it's interesting because it sounds like she's just speaking from inside the costume almost, which is interesting, but I don't know, like it because we know that a small man plays Minya, and but I'm almost positive it's a female voice, but it sounds like they just put her in the costume and had her say the dialogue. I don't know what kind of weird effect they're doing to try and create her voice, but it doesn't sound like Minya's voice is done in any kind of special recording booth or anything. It just sounds like they were on set with a mask on saying the dialogue.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of either one. I could say.
Yeah,
If I
yeah,
could choose,
yeah.
I might say the American dub for the voice over the Japanese, but I wouldn't go too far on that.
Yeah, it at least leans a bit more into the overtly cartoonish child fantasy nature of it all, I suppose. The American voice. One thing I will say that I prefer in the American version is the opening music, the opening credits song. It's this very sort of cringy Japanese singing in the original version that's kind of grating to the ears, and they just replace it with a kind of jazzy, generic kind of groovy music in the opening of the American version. It's like the one big sort of change they made, and at least the American version is a little bit like more of an earworm and a little easier on the ears than the very like weird Japanese song.
Yeah, the main titles that it plays over that song. I was listening to the soundtrack today actually to make sure that I got my favorite score correctly. Like just a little rerun. Like, all right, let me double check on this one because this is a tough one. And
Yeah,
I was looking for that American version, and I was like, where is that American
yeah.
theme at? Like, because I do
Yeah.
like that little, like you said, it's like a little jazzy, upbeat tune.
Yeah, if you ever want to find that track, I believe it is called Crime Fiction. So I think if you YouTube Crime Fiction Godzilla's Revenge, I think it will pop up for you on YouTube.
Okay, I might have to look that up instead of listening to this original soundtrack again.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
I
while
got
we're on
a.
soundtracks, do we want to talk about favorite slash default soundtrack choice?
We can. We absolutely can. You want to start that off?
Yeah, I mean it's kind of just the one main kind of track. I again, forgive me for not knowing what it is, but it's not the song sung in the opening credits, but it's the main thing you're hearing through the whole thing. It has to win by default, you know, the it's got to be that one because that's all. It feels like that's almost the only song you're hearing through most of the movie.
I think that goes along. I think that might be the same one I chose.
Uh-huh.
The name of the one I chose was Monster Islands Monsters Part Two,
Okay,
and
it's got to be it. It's probably certainly it. It's a little bit of an upbeat tune for this movie, and it is what it is.
yeah, it needs something to keep you awake, and that tune, if you're cranking, the film on surround sound, that kicks on, it might wake you up a little. Bit. Do we want to go right into favorite character and quote and everything if we have one?
Uh, yeah, sure.
I only I only got one fun fact for you. I'll do that one and then I'll get into my favorite character. And
Okay, sure.
it's simple. It's just due to production costs. All Monsters Attack includes extensive stock footage of Ebra, Horror of the Deep, Son of Godzilla, King Kong escapes and destroy all monsters. The filmmakers also employed the same Godzilla suit for this film that was used in Destroy All Monsters. So that was the only thing that I could really find that I thought was interesting. Clearly, if you watch the film and you're a Godzilla fan, you know that already.
Yeah, I remember as a kid being thrown for such a loop. This was the first time where I ever noticed that the scenes in this movie were stock footage from another movie. Like I know there's a number of Godzilla movies that use stock footage, but this was the first time where as a kid I put it together. I was because I'd rented Son of Godzilla multiple times. I had Godzilla versus the Sea Monster on VHS, and I rented this one once, and I was like, huh. I'm like he's not just like fighting these monsters that he's fought before. I'm like this is the exact same scenes that are in those other movies, and as a kid, it felt so odd. I did not understand. It felt almost like a little bit of a ripoff. And I'd be interested in seeing the stats on exactly how much of the monster action and monster footage in this movie is stock footage. What percentage of this movie is stock footage from other movies? Because it's only 69 minutes. Some of that's credits. So, like, how much of this movie is it? What is it? A third of the movie? A fourth of the movie that's footage from other movies? It's.
Well, when it comes to the monster fights, I think everything almost, or the monster scenes, everything might almost be stock footage besides the Godzilla and Minya trying to get him to blow his atomic breath again, because clearly it's a different Godzilla suit than was in Son of Godzilla.
Yeah,
And
they
then
refilmed that
maybe,
scene. Yeah, and then the
and then maybe
Gabra
him.
stuff.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna
Yeah,
say. Just Gabra.
yeah,
So I mean, maybe 10 minutes or so out of
yeah.
however much
Because
monster.
because we see the Condor fight from Sea Monsters reused, the Ebra fight from Sea Monsters reused, the Kamacuras fight from Son of Godzilla is reused. They reused
Kamonga.
some Kumanga stuff from Son of Godzilla, and then you've got the Gabra Minya Godzilla stuff, and so that's a pretty small portion of it.
Yeah, I wish I could have found out what the budget was for this one because with reusing all those scenes, they had to be just barely scrape up a budget just to get a movie, going and just to get one to the theaters in Japan.
Yeah, yeah, it's unfortunate. Uh, One thing, well, we're gonna get into other aspects, so I'll bring it up then.
I'll go into my favorite character, and there, I chose Ichiro. I chose the little boy just because there's not really anyone else to go for unless you're going after one of the monsters. I thought about choosing Minya just because he is talking in this one, and he befriends Ichiro, and they kind of help each other get over the hump with their bullies and stuff. But when it comes to characters in this film, this is probably the least entertained with the characters that she'll be in the franchise. I'm hoping. If
Yeah,
somebody else thinks otherwise, please let me know what characters you think are less entertaining than this film.
yeah. There's a term for the kind of character that Ichiro is playing in this movie, and it's called a Kenny. Whenever there's a sort of precocious child in one of these Japanese giant monster movies that just feels like obligatory insert child character. The internet community always calls them a Kenny, and so like Ichiro's a Kenny in here, but yeah, I was along the same lines as you. I considered maybe going with Minya just as like the role model for the young child, and that's kind of a positive thing. But I mean, Ichiro's the kind of essentially the only character in the movie with any kind of substance. So you got to root for the kid that escapes from the kidnappers and overcomes his bullies. Good for him.
Yeah, for sure. I was literally looking for other characters I could choose, and I was like, oh, maybe the babysitter. No, he's only in a couple small scenes, talking to the mom on the phone, and telling Ichiro he got a new toy in the beginning or
Yeah.
computer or whatever it is, and so like you said, by default, Ichiro, you're the winner on this one. So I did somehow I picked a quote out of this one when I didn't pick one for Destroy All Monsters.
Go
So
for it.
I have two, and they're actually both from Minya. And it's if I always run, Godzilla will think I'm a coward. And then I chose just a couple seconds later, they see the jets flying over the island, and he almost says it like he's irritated. Humans are coming to invade our island again. So I chose those two just for fun's sake.
Yeah, yeah. Those are I like. Yeah. I always I went with I went with that Minya line about Godzilla and the coward, and I always, as a kid, one of the things I always remembered from this movie, from the English dub, is when Minya says, Godzilla says I have to learn to fight my own battles, or something like that. It just always kind of stuck in my brain. So yeah, that, I mean, if I got to go with something, I got to go with that. Otherwise you're maybe searching for something towards the end where the neighbor character is talking about the kid using Minya as like a role model, or a higher power to look up to. But outside of that, not a whole lot of zingers of dialogue in this movie.
No, and after this one, I feel like we start to get into films that it'll be a little bit easier to find a quote or like a just a line of dialogue that we like. It's like, oh, that's a good one. You know,
Yeah,
uh,
even a cool line or an interesting line for sure.
yeah, they get a little more environmental and stuff like that. So, there's always in films like that, there's always going to be a line of dialogue about the earth or pollution or something that'll catch your attention.
Uh, do you have a favorite scene?
I did. I chose the Godzilla and Gabara fight scene. Um, it was just it was the new footage. It wasn't stock footage, and he's he's electrocuting Godzilla out of his hands, or when he's grabbing him, and Godzilla takes his arm and flips him over his shoulder. Again, like some kind of WWE, and it was it was nice to see that they had actually filmed something new that wasn't stock footage compared to all the rest of the monster films or monster scenes in the film.
Yeah, and there's a great little moment. That's a good scene. That's kind of the only real estate as far as the monster scenes go. And there's a great moment where Gabra takes like a point blank blast to the face of the atomic breath. And so, like, I always love moments like that. Uh, I did want to take this time to highlight some of the non monster stuff as some stuff I really liked. Again, to not just kind of be throwing a bunch of shade on the movie, but there's a lot of interesting scene transitions between the real world and the imaginary world that Honda did, that I actually think have like some cool creative flair to them. There's a moment where Ichiro's calling out, and the lighting and image all blacks out around him, and he's sort of just standing in the void. And that's a great little scene transition. And there's another one where he's on the island, and these sort of leaves behind him come alive and grab him. And it's like a leaf man that comes alive and grabs him, and then it transitions and shows that he's being apprehended by one of the kidnappers. And that scene where the sort of leaf man grabs him on the island always freaked me out a lot as a kid. Like, it's like such a weird moment. So there's some interesting things that Honda was doing outside of the realm of the monsters with this movie that I did want to bring up, and he had fun with the sort of transitions from the imaginary world to the real world that I wanted to give a shout out to.
Yeah, there's like almost like some acid trippy color scenes, on some of the transitions.
Yeah, some psychedelic stuff,
There you go. That's the word. Thank you for helping me out there.
which is on point because it's an omen for the next entry in the series.
um, I'm right there with you. I can't wait for that next one. That next one should be good. But were those? Did you just want to holler out those scenes, give them a shout out, or did you?
Yeah. You went with the monster scene, and so I just wanted to say that I appreciated the some of the artistry of the scene transitions because there's not a ton that I love and enjoy or like about this movie. So I wanted to say some positive things, so that it's not just a crap fest.
Yeah, it's not that I hate this film or anything like that. Um, it's just not my favorite Godzilla film. But if you gave me money to direct a Godzilla film, I would probably have something worse than this. I wouldn't know what I'm doing. But coming from Ishiro Honda, we can give you some flack for this one for compared to some previous work that you've done.
Yeah, I certainly think that it's a combination of a lot of things. I think Eiji Tsuburaya, who usually directed the visual effects of these films, was either in poor health or recently passed away around this time. I'm not completely certain on that, but I think there were issues with some of the special effects direction that created some strains. Certainly, the movie had a really small budget, probably a pretty quick turnaround from Destroy All Monsters. Honda just personally might have been getting a little fatigued with the giant monster stuff. There was a point where Destroy All Monsters was going to be considered the finale, and then he kind of gets asked to come back and do this sort of cheap, quick churn out movie. His inclinations personally as a director were clearly more in the slice of life, uh, dramatic stuff that we see in the movie, and not towards the monster stuff. So there's clearly a lot of factors at play here that I don't think anyone was just phoning it in and not giving a crap. I just think that there were a lot of factors that strained this and pushed and pulled it into some less than satisfactory directions.
Yeah, and I agree with you that you never know what's going on behind the scenes. It just could have been a bunch of disagreements between Toho and Ishiro Honda, and or like you said, they had one of their guys in bad health. It just you never know what's going on. So over here in America, we have movies that get started being made, and the director leaves mid movie, and they have to replace him with somebody else, and they come in, and you can tell like in a film like two different styles were the
Mm-hmm.
first half compared to the second half. Or I'll have to see if I can find something that happened on, I believe it happened in Jaws 2, where a director filmed a couple scenes and then ended up leaving due to like the studio not liking his ideas and kind of like harassing him about it. So they had to hire someone else to come in and finish the
Yeah,
film.
yeah. There's a couple notorious examples. There's two versions of Superman 2. There's two versions of Justice League. I think there's two versions of the Exorcist prequel or Exorcist prologue. So there's a couple of infamous cases of sort of dual versions of movies from different directors and troubled productions and things of that nature. So yeah, I'm not trying to be too harsh on the movie.
Nope, because like I said, I probably couldn't do any better. With all the ideas I've thought of over the years, you still have to find the budget for it, the marketing, all that.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so,
Um, one thing I was gonna say, just a little note, is that I don't really love either title of this movie. I don't, Godzilla's Revenge is just as generic as it comes, and Godzilla's not really taking revenge on anything in this movie. And then All Monsters Attack is sort of it feels like a clickbait title, because they followed up Destroy All Monsters, which that earns its title. You have a big sort of monster battle, but calling this one All Monsters Attack, it sort of feels disingenuous as a title, and so I don't love the name of either version of this movie. And again, I'll always say like maybe the name should have had like maybe a name like Godzilla on Monster Island or something like that would have been more appropriate for this movie, or even like Minya on Monster Island, or something that wasn't, I don't know. Maybe it's good that it's called All Monsters Attack. Maybe we all need to lean more into the fact that this shouldn't really be considered a Godzilla movie. I don't know. Does it need to be annexed from the franchise? Who knows? Who's to say?
Yeah, I used to get when I was younger. I got super excited seeing the title, Godzilla's Revenge, because to me that means he's coming back, and anyone that gets in his way, he's destroying. He's
Yeah,
absolutely just gonna mutilate him, and it's gonna be a no holds bars kind of matchup, and he's gonna get down to a one on one with a final dominant monster, and
yeah,
he's just gonna kicked their ass completely. And then I watched it, and as a kid, I didn't. When I was younger, I didn't get that these were all dream sequences. By the time I was like 9, 10, rewatched it, I understood, and I was just like, "Well, this is stupid." But over the
yeah,
years, I've grown to appreciate it for what it is.
yeah. Because in a lot of ways, it's interesting. It's like people debate the sort of the level of continuity that this movie exists on. Like there are some people that kind of say like this movie takes place in the real world, and Ichiro is a kid who has seen the Godzilla movies, and so he's fantasizing and imagining about them. And then there are people that kind of take a different perspective that it's like, no, Ichiro exists in a world where Godzilla is real, like he exists in the world of these monsters that these movies have taken place in, but he is fantasizing his own adventures with them. So it's like, is it one of these meta movies where it's like this is a movie where all of the Godzilla movies are movies, or is it just one of these things where this is a child in the Godzilla universe fantasizing about Godzilla? But like either way, it's all sort of fantasy, and it's kind of all kind of off the books in terms of the storyline or the continuity. It's not really a part of the franchise in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and before you get my brain thinking too hard on this one, uh, I'm gonna go straight into our tier rating because I'm pretty sure I know where this is going on both of our lists.
Yeah. So I'll be bold and I'll go first, and I will say that of the 10 Godzilla movies we have gone through up to this point, All Monsters Attack is in the number 10 spot for me at the very bottom.
I 100% agree with you. I'm gonna be a copycat here. It is also going in my number 10 spot. And what's interesting is next week we're gonna be on to our 11th film, and we're gonna have to start getting rid of these films one by one, week to week.
We're going to start officially having to do it. Well, I'll show my hand a little bit and say that this one will be the first one on the chopping block. Maybe I'll come out of left field with something, but no, this is certainly nothing against it. Not trying to be hateful or spiteful or talk down of the work and effort that was put into making the movie. But if I could keep 10 Godzilla movies, this would not be one of them.
Well, I'm glad to hear that Invasion of Astro Monster is safe for at least one more week.
Yeah, yes, indeed, indeed.
All right. Well, this film, All Monsters Attack, was followed up by Godzilla vs. Hedra on July 24th, 1971. And we'll be looking at that one next week. I got to see that one at G Fest, believe last year, and it was a fun ride. So
Oh, you
I'm
you got
excited
to
to
see
watch
it.
this.
You got to see it in theaters on a big screen. That's cool. Any of these vintage Godzilla movies in a theater setting is just a that's a treat. We might even have to maybe do a little special recording episode about your time at G Fest and some of the cool stuff you saw and cool stuff you did. Maybe we can just have a little discussion.
Absolutely, because I told my lady I'm gonna take a good chunk of money down there for like T-shirts and collectibles and stuff. So
Yeah, yeah, definitely got to get the goodies.
100%. But Chris, that's all I got for you on this one. Got a short episode today. If you got nothing else for me,
Yeah, not, it's a good attempt at a movie. There's positive things to be found for it. A little kid would certainly enjoy it, I think. But yeah, not breaking any new ground and saying that it's probably the weakest entry of the franchise up to this point for a number of reasons that all contribute to it sort of being a weak entry.
yeah, 100%. And I think that most Godzilla fans would agree with us. But again, we are doing Godzilla vs. Hedra next week, so tune in for that one. Thanks again for joining me, Chris. Fun as always.
Yep, absolutely. Always a pleasure.
All right, I will see you next week, but until next time.